All right, and here we go. Next build. Because building one Gundam was so fun, gonna go and build another one. This is the Strike Gundam in Master Grade. Now, before I dig any further into this one, this kit, this Gundam, I have looked at for a while in its perfect grade incarnation, I should say, as a perfect grade kit. But, you know, perfect grades are rather pricey. So I saw this. Not only is it master grade, but I was in Hobby Lobby and I just went in to get, what was I in there for? Anyway, it was to get something small. I think it was some paint, whatever the case was. I went in and, you know, they happened to have one of those 40% off sales. So I was able to pick this up basically for the cost of a high grade kit. And at that point, I just couldn't say no. All right. Now, inside, like with any of these master grades, and like I just showed with doing the Zaku Warrior, lots of pieces. So I'm going to take a quick pause. I'll come back and we will dig through some of these pieces because there is a nice surprise, which you may have already noticed, in the bottom of the box. All right, quick pause. Okay, so I have unbagged everything and it's a lot of sprues. So let's just take a quick tour. As with all of these Bandai kits, we have a full color molding. And as usual, again, the mold detail and the cleanliness of the molds is fantastic. I mean, just look at the detail we have inside these nacelles here. Really nice stuff. I can see right away we do not have posable hands. We have hand replacement parts, as we did with the Gunner Zaku. And now we're getting into various structural pieces. More hand parts. This, unlike the Zaku, which had that, if you watched that build, I noted that they used almost like a little bit of a rubbery plastic for the internal frame, which I had not seen before. This one goes back to the engineering style plastic, you know, really dense, and you can feel it when you pick up one of these sprues. They do have a certain meat or weight to them that you don't have on regular plastic, and they also have different kind of feel to them that goes along with the higher strength of the plastic, which is just, it's nice to see because it keeps the kit durable once it is built. And here we go with some more red pieces. We got some feet, big shield section. And also here, this is interesting, we do have polycap sprue. So this is using a little bit of both. Normally, when you see the engineering plastics for the inner frame, the kit will rely just on the engineering plastics and their fit. This one has both engineering plastic and polycap. And although what I do see here, I see quite a few ball joint type connection pieces. So they're probably on lower strain areas. Go into our A sprue, the multicolor sprue, which I always love to see. We got some nice yellow, and as you can tell already, this is molded in classic Gundam aesthetic color palette: yellow, blue, white, red. You know, it's just a phenomenal look when it's all done. And just to give you an idea, this is how our guy will look 1C is built. And, you know, very sleek, very cool. So we have some more armor pieces, another piece of shield, yet more body pieces. Looking very nice. Oh yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. And back to engineering plastics. Again, you can tell these are leg structures. As his basic torso block with the seat. Just to back up a little bit here on this one. Again, we do have the scale figures. They give you 2 sets. I guess in various Gundam storylines, there were 2 different pilots for this one. But in any event, I won't be able to detail either. So with my hobby situation being what it is. But somebody will end up in that seat because gotta have somebody in there. So there we go. And now we get to the bottom of what was in the box. And this was a surprise to me. I was not expecting this at all. They give you a giant display base with this big arm. This looks like it mounts in there on a support member to triangle up and have big flying poses, you know. And that is really cool because I have not seen a display base included with any Gundam that I have built previously. And that's nice. It also has some detail to it. It's not just a stand. There is this, what looks like a big cable supply. And if you're at all familiar with the Gundam series, this is like the launch rack. The way they envision these things in the Gundam universe is you have like basically space carriers, and they have these launch racks with these cleats. The Gundam is stood in the cleat with the power couple at the rear. That's what the wire here will simulate. That plugs into the back of the Gundam, and once it's time for launch, the cleats rocket down the stage, sort of like on an aircraft carrier, and out into space the Gundam goes for deployment. So it's kind of nice that we just don't have a plain old base with an arm sticking up, as typical aftermarket bases are from Bandai. We actually have a base that is detailed, which is really cool. So that will be nice to build up. We have here the beams for the 2 beam sabers. These are flexible, so if you're concerned about safety issues, there we go. And looking in the decal bag, I was very happy to see that we have some dry rub decals. These, as I talked about with the, again, with the Gunner Zaku that I just did, these look fantastic. We do get some of the vinyl self-adhesive. Well, I'll see about those, because as I did on the Gunner Zaku, you know, they are not so great in the way they look. But on white plastic, these blend away a little bit better, being that this has the more classic Gundam aesthetic. There's obviously a whole lot of white, but again, as with the Zaku, you know, you see here there are no decals on this build mock-up, and I mean, visually there is a lot going on there. So whatever decals I use, I will probably use sparingly. I will probably skew towards using the dry rub and staying away from the vinyl. And that'll be pretty cool. And then we have the foil decals for his eyes, and these are probably for the scope on his little friend there. So there we go. Oh, and here we show color setup for the two different figures. You know, when I get my hobby area back, maybe I can do that. They do show you difference, even though there's no English in these instructions. It's all Japanese, but this is just a referral to show the difference between non-panel lined and panel lined before and after. The only English here. And you can see that makes a nice difference. And to show you some more pictures of how this guy builds up. So here he is. That is that action base or pose base, whatever you want to call it. We can see some demos of the flexibility and articulation, which all looks great. And in some high drama poses here, and how it actually, the Strike Gundam looked in the animated series. We do also get with this, it's not just the Gundam. Besides the base, we also get this booster jetpack, whatever you want to call this thing, which is, it's like a pretty decent assembly all in itself that plugs into the Gundam's back instead of, you know, a lot of Gundams have like a backpack, weapons, stash, whatever. This guy, for his backpack, he has this booster assembly, which looks pretty cool. So, and there it is by itself. So yeah, we could do, when it's done, have the Gundam, this base. So it'll take up some shelf real estate, but that should look really cool when it's all assembled. So there we go. We have the GAT X105. I guess that's supposed to be Aile Strike Gundam. Very cool. So, as usual, I will say thank you for watching, subscribing. Please do hit that alert button, like, share, all that good stuff. Thank you for watching, and time to get building. All right. All right, so here we are with a whole bunch of assembly and looking oh so cool. So as I did with the Zaku gunner, I just laid out everything here, sort of dissected, but to give you a basic view of how everything is going to fit together. Now, one thing I will say right off the bat is there are quite a few extra pieces in this kit. If you're into, or I should say if you're new to building Gundams, always hang on to your spare the polycap parts. Those always come in handy. Not really spares, but the extra hand pieces, those are always good to hold on to. We have some additional hands, and then because this kit, like a number of Gundam kits, are multi-purposed, we do have some extra pieces here that probably go for different versions of the Strike Gundam. So there we go. Of course, the pilot figures, not really extra. Once again, if I had full access to all my paints and stuff, I would definitely be detailing those, particularly for something I will explain in a moment. And we have some forearm pieces and some foot pieces. So all extra stuff, always good to have. You know, spare parts are really worth their weight in gold. I know I've mentioned this in several other build videos, but particularly with these Gundams. And just as a quick little story, I was building a Gundam one time, and I was doing one of these foot pieces. I don't remember if it was exactly one of these that goes in the front of the foot, but for whatever reason, I snipped wrong and snipped off one of the pegs on the piece, and it was going to be a big problem. But again, because some of these kits are repurposed into different versions, I dug into my spare parts. I had a spare. I was right back into action. So just like with cars, trucks, ships, whatever you're building, always hold on to your spares, because they can really help you out if you make a mistake and suddenly find yourself in a bind. Okay, lecture for the day. Now, we have our Strike Gundam, which is looking very cool. We have his handy dandy little friend here. We have a nice shield. This assembly, I'm not quite sure. The parts are included in the kit. They show you how to assemble it, but they don't really show you anything else to do with it afterwards. And the blurb in the instructions that accompanies this is all in Japanese. So whatever, it's a cool little assemblage here. Not quite sure what it's for, but whatever, it is there. What is really neat is this, the Aile pack, or Ale pack, I should say. I'm guessing phonetically that's how you would pronounce it. That clips into the Gundam's back with this tab right here. And this is a pretty neat assembly, which basically makes your Gundam into sort of really futuristic looking, I don't know, jet fighter, tactical support, you name it. But this was a very cool assembly. Yet the flaps actually work on the wings. The hilts for the beam sabers attach on top. But some of the things I wanted to point out on this is the way the kit is engineered for color separation. And we have down here these grills, a separate color, but even these little pieces up front, very neat for the intakes. You know, that stuff just could have been done on the part and it would have been left in black. And if you wanted that detail, you would have had to go in there and paint it. But it is always impressive the lengths that Bandai employs in their kit engineering to give you that detail right out of the box. Also, the inside of these thrusters, there are loads of detail on these pieces in there. And if you really wanted to go overboard, you could easily drill some holes in there, mount LEDs in there. There is some space in these. You could engineer a switch in there and run some other LEDs up into these guys and have a light up thrust pack, which, you know, I don't think it's necessary to say, but that would be so cool. So there is that to consider. And once that is assembled and the Gundam is all together, that should look really dramatic. But again, in terms of color separation, the way the kit is engineered, you know, even these little, these little cutouts that they do to let under the color of subsurface parts come through so that you have that really neat. Here again, we have two small red pieces that go on the underlying piece, then the white pieces over it for the skirts, and you know, you get that detail in there. That's just really neat. Same back here, you know, these kinds of little details, again, pointing through here. I really enjoy this kind of stuff because to me, it says, you know, you're not just buying something that was basically tossed together and put in the box for you. You are getting something that was really thoughtfully engineered. And I am trying to open up the little cockpit chamber here, which, as you can see, is not too easy on this. And part of that was what I wanted to show. There we go. Yes, I would have liked to paint the figure, and the mechanism as to how this opens is pretty neat. We got a slide, we got a point of rotation, and then we have this on a double rotating assembly. And way deep in there, you can see our little pilot figure. Again, if you wanted to put LEDs in the Aile thruster pack, I guess you could run an LED mounted up in there to see in there, but then the wire would have to come out the back here to mate into here, and then this would have to be permanently attached, but something to do. Nevertheless, I just wanted to show you that functionality is there, and in terms of its mechanical function, it is pretty neat the way that all works, even if it is not quite so practical in access. And again, with part and color separation, this head is simply exquisite the way this was engineered, and the molding detail on it. You know, the little slits in the Gundam head here. Make sure I'm in focus. Yeah, the little slits on the Gundam head here to get the darker color underneath, the foil decal for the eyes, foil decal for the cameras, you know, slits back here to show the under detail, even the little nozzles here, this protruding, you know, it really is something else. The only quibble I have with this is the antennas, let's call them, for lack of anything else. This is rather loose, so I'm going to see if I can dig out my some glue, and that I will actually glue on so that it stays on. So that's all very neat, but to circle back to what I was saying about the figures, I'm just going to slide everything here aside, move this out of the way, and talk about the base that they give you with the kit. Now, you'll notice it's not just a big slab of that dark gray plastic that was in the box originally. The more I looked at that, the more I just thought I have to find something I can do with this. So I dug through my garage. I know I had this Rust-Oleum, I think they call it chrome silver or whatever it is, that I used on the Widow City Starry Night. I knew I had that, and as fortune would have it, I did have a can of flat black. So I figured, well, that's a nice two-tone. I did that. Because I have no place else to spray, I had to spray this outside on a very humid day. So probably an obvious thing to many people, but it was not quite so obvious to me. The detriment of spraying in a high humidity environment. When I countermasked to do the silver, because I did the black first, then went to do the silver, some of the black paint just peeled right off the plastic. I was not happy when I saw that, because in my head I already had a picture of how I wanted this to look, and it did not include all the paint being ripped off. But my wife and my younger son, when I was taking the masking tape off, we were all sitting on our deck, they said to me, just leave it. It looks cool. It looks like you meant it that way and that it was weathered. You know, that this launch deck has been taking some use and abuse. And the more I looked at it, the more I thought, you know what? I'll buy that line. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, you know, it looks fine just the way it is. And two, since it was this fairly dark gray originally, it's not such a stark contrast with the flat black. And the way the ragged edges came through from the way the paint adhered or did not adhere, it looks like, you know, sort of a wear pattern. I know you weathering experts out there are probably laughing at me right now, but if you've watched my videos, I'm not big on weathering. I don't like building my things beat up, but you know what? For this, I'll I'll give myself an exception and say good enough as is. But as far as detailing, unfortunately, I was into doing this before I thought Dopey forgot to film it. But you know, it's just the two colors that I sprayed. Then I went back and I went with, fortunately, my Molotow marker, and I had some colored markers that were accessible. So I did this on here, these mold details. So I did them red, yellow, and green, you know, sort of like a launch tree for a drag race as the Gundam is ready to launch. I did go and just do a little bit of detailing on the cleats for the launch. These are connected with a piece underneath so that you can position the Gundam at any point from static, standing, waiting to launch, to off it goes for deployment. So this is the wire. This can plug into the back to represent the charging. I went into my decal stash and I just added a few decals to dress it up a little bit more, because it's not the generic action base. This actually has some details to it. So I thought, well, let me work with that, because it can be a pretty neat piece on its own. And I mentioned about the pilot figures. You know, you could take these and you could either clip off the base or just paint the base flat black and glue the pilot figure on there. And then when you have the Gundam displayed on the stand with the scale pilot figures, that's pretty cool. That's really something that could give it a nice, real nice shelf presence. So, and this arm is articulated, so you can pose this or position this at various heights. This plugs into the back of the Gundam, and you could have your Gundam in flight, or if you just want it standing in the cleats, you fold that down. So very neat. Now all that's left to do is final assembly for our Strike Gundam here, and he will be ready for for final detailing. So they do give the dry rub. They give some vinyl adhesive decals, which I mentioned I'm not too crazy about. Definitely going to use the dry rub. And again, I may not use all of them because he's pretty detail rich, as we're about to see, because I'm going to push them together right now. And we have in these side skirts his little knives here, which are dropped in just like so. And then that closes up, and this clicks onto his armor. There we go. Oh, I should have done his leg first. All right, let's see. Should be able to squeeze that in. It's one leg, two legs. We can fold that back down. Now, I got to tell you, I had mentioned that this Strike Gundam was one that I always wanted to do in perfect grade, and I bought it in master grade not only because it was on sale, but because I figured that's a pretty reasonable compromise. But I gotta tell you, this is so neat, this Gundam. Now I want the perfect grade even more. So who knows, when I have my hobby area back in action, that may be something I will need to look into. There we go, that's on there. And certainly, even though they represent like these little knives on his side skirts, and they're in there and you can actually take them out and use them with the Gundam. Not the easiest things to get to, as you can see from the effort it took to get those in. So I'm sure in perfect grade that will be significantly more cooperative, let's say. There we go. And last but not least, his head. And there we have him, the Strike Gundam. And he is looking very cool. And again, the reason I did this before doing the decals, just wanted to show you how much detail there is on this. And one of the reasons I love this Gundam design is, you know, with all the gray of the underframe poking through, he really is a visually ornate design. So he is looking good. So there we go. I am now going to do some panel lining, put on some of those dry rubs, and then when I come back, we'll have him on his base with his thrust pack, his shield, his little friend, and we'll see the final presentation, final assembly reveal. Okay, even though he's assembled. So, gonna get to that and be back in a little bit. Alrighty. Okay, so here we go. All built up. And yes, ambient sounds. Birds, dogs. I'm sitting out on my deck doing this. My basement is far from being done from the leak and damage, and my hobby area is still out of the way, and I needed a little bit more space to fit all of this in the shot. So I figured I'll sit out on my deck and do the final build right here, since it's a nice summer day. So that little story aside, here we go. The Strike Gundam with the Aile booster pack and this really cool display base. And as you can see, I've got him mounted on there in a nice action pose, raised up. So it does make for a fairly sizable, as you can tell from my hands, a fairly sizable final display piece. But boy, it does look pretty cool, have to say that. And the detail on this is really, it's pretty remarkable. And once again, not to, you know, beat the drum endlessly, but I basically, you know, was able to do minimal detailing on this. because of my situation with my hobby table, blah blah blah. But this is basically what you see. This is just decals. This is some black panel lining, and that's it. This is what you pretty much get out of the box, and that is really remarkable. So I talked about what I did with the base, so that's obviously a different story. I'm just talking about the Gundam itself right now, Mr. Strike Gundam here. And let's pull in a little bit closer so you can see a little bit more of this guy up close. Seems the birds like him, if you can hear the birds on the video. Now, I did stick mostly with the dry rub, and those are the ones you see here, and a couple on the shield. I did do some of the vinyl adhesive on the white parts, oops, because the carrier film, or I should say the background film, is somewhat less visible on the white. Of course, on the darkly colored pieces, those are all rub on, and you can see there's no sign of carrier film or surround film on those, which is really cool. So that looks nice and sharp. Love the color separation on this. I know I talked about that a couple of times, but just a, no pun intended, but just a striking piece to look at. So can't recommend this kit highly enough. Even if you're not into, you know, gunpla, the hobby of building Gundams, such a cool build, such a cool final product. I know I mentioned in the beginning that I got this with the idea of calming my hunger for building this guy in perfect grade, and as I hinted during the build, after building this now in master grade and seeing just how cool this is, think I might have to make the leap and do the perfect grade, because this guy is just so cool. So rather than just spinning him around, I do want to show you a little bit of his articulation. And you can see he is mounted fairly securely on there, so you don't have to worry about him falling off. But you know, you can see how these legs can move. You know, I love the articulation on the knee joint, which you get fairly commonly in master grades. That is really cool. So we can straighten his legs out, and if you look at this, I mean, you can do quite the split there if you want to build a gymnast Gundam. But oops. Now you may say, oh yeah, great build right now. Well, this is part of what goes with master grades. They can be a little finicky, and they can at times pop apart. All right, I'm not saying directly how to put that on, so I'm not going to prolong the video here. So sometimes it does take care moving them around into poses and moving and working with the articulation. Because this is quite detailed, that means small parts. Small parts mean that sometimes things can be somewhat delicate. So yeah, well, that is maybe a little bit of a embarrassment in doing the final build here. Nevertheless, everything can be seen for what it is. This pack can pop right out. There we go. And then we just have our Gundam, and he builds up very cool as well. And we'll get him looking at the camera. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's our guy. Not going to go for too long showing this, because I know I did a lot showing with the build and everything else. I will have to check back at my instructions, figure out how exactly I get this piece back on. That's why always important save your instructions, especially in these cases. I know I've said in some earlier builds, even for cars, trucks, whatever you build, always save your instructions. You know, you have a kit falls off a shelf or something breaks. Sometimes, you know, if it's any period of time after the build is done, it can be very questionable as to how something goes back together. So keep your instructions. If you ever need to do repairs, they can be of invaluable assistance in doing that. So, and even this, I know this would be a very simple thing to do. I'm just not in my brain right now to remember how exactly that went on, but that's quite a few assemblies ago, and because it's not always intuitive with these pieces how exactly they go together, I will look at my instructions and repair him. So, lecture for the day. In any event, this is the Master Grade Aile Strike Gundam with this very cool action base, the Strike pack on the back, and the Strike Gundam itself. Super cool. So I am hoping, even though still a bit away from having the basement repaired and getting my hobby space back, contract work is pretty well done. Insurance just has to do their last peek at things. So I am hoping, fingers crossed, that things will start moving a little bit faster, and that for the next build I can be back at my desk, and the first thing I will do is finish up a build I was halfway through when I had to stop because of my basement episode. So that's it for now. Once again, thank you for watching, and remember to enjoy your hobby no matter where you have to do it. Okay, thank you.